Ancient Mesopotamia, often referred to as the cradle of civilization, was home to some of the earliest complex societies. Among the defining characteristics of these early city-states was the fusion of religious and economic life, embodied in the temple economy and theocratic rule. The temples, dedicated to various gods, were not just places of worship, but also economic and political centers that played a fundamental role in governing society. The priests, acting as intermediaries between the gods and the people, held significant power in both spiritual and material affairs. This system of governance, known as theocratic rule, ensured that religious institutions maintained control over vast resources and shaped the political landscape of Mesopotamia. This paper explores the temple economy and theocratic rule in ancient Mesopotamia, analyzing their origins, functions, economic impact, and eventual transformation over time. By examining archaeological and textual evidence, we can better understand how religion and economy were deeply intertwined in the world's earliest civilizations. 1. The origins of temple economy in Mesopotamia. The temple economy in Mesopotamia dates back to the early phases of urbanization around the late 4th millennium BCE during the Uruk period. As small agricultural settlements grew into city-states, the need for organized administration and resource distribution increased. The ziggurat, a towering-like temple, became the center of economic and social activity. These temples were dedicated to deities such as Enlil, the chief god of Nippur, Inanna, the goddess of love and war in Uruk, and Enki, the god of wisdom in Eridu. The earliest records of Mesopotamian administration come from temple archives, which contain clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform writing. These documents reveal that the temples managed large estates, controlled irrigation systems, stored surplus grain, and employed thousands of workers. The temple, as the house of the city's patron god, was seen as the rightful owner of the land, while humans were merely stewards working for the divine. The temple's role in the economy was based on the concept that everything belonged to the gods. As a result, agricultural produce, trade goods, and manufactured items were brought to the temple as offerings or as part of a redistributive system. These offerings were then used to sustain the priests, temple workers, and the city's population. 2. Theocratic rule and the role of priests. In a theocratic society, the ruling authority was considered to be of divine origin or directly representing the gods. In early Mesopotamian cities, rulers were often seen as priests or stewards, serving the gods rather than kings in a purely secular sense. The ensi, governor, Harist, was the head of the temple and was responsible for managing its wealth, conducting religious ceremonies, and overseeing economic activities. As Mesopotamian city-states grew in size and complexity, the role of kings, Lugal, emerged. However, even after the rise of kingship, rulers maintained a close relationship with the temples to legitimize their power. Kings often presented themselves as chosen by the gods, and their rule was justified through divine approval. Many Mesopotamian rulers, such as Hammurabi of Babylon and Sargon of Akkad, emphasized their role as protectors of temples and as enforcers of divine justice. The priests were key figures in governance, acting as advisors, scribes, and economic managers. The temple administration collected taxes in the form of grain, livestock, and other goods, redistributing them among the population or using them for large-scale construction projects. Priests also maintained the calendars that determined the timing of religious festivals and agricultural activities. The temple as an economic center. The temple economy functioned as a redistributive system, where wealth was collected and allocated according to religious and social needs. The temple employed a vast workforce that included farmers, herders, craftsmen, and scribes. Workers were often paid in rations of grain, beer, and textiles rather than currency, reflecting an economy based on barter and redistribution rather than market exchange. Key economic functions of the temple included 1. Land ownership and agriculture. Temples controlled vast agricultural estates, which were worked by dependent laborers or leased to farmers who paid a portion of their harvest as rent. 2. Irrigation management. Since Mesopotamian agriculture depended on irrigation, temples played a vital role in maintaining canals, dikes, and reservoirs. 3. Trade and commerce. The temple engaged in long-distance trade, acquiring raw materials such as copper from Anatolia, timber from Lebanon, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Trade expeditions were often organized by temple officials. 4. Craft production. Temples operated workshops where skilled artisans produced goods such as pottery, textiles, and metalwork. These goods were used for temple rituals, exported in trade, or distributed to workers. 5. Taxation and storage. The temple collected taxes and stored surplus grain in massive granaries. These reserves were used in times of famine or for public projects. The temple economy was thus a complex, state-controlled system that ensured stability and prosperity while reinforcing religious authority. 4. Decline and transformation of the temple economy. While temples remained influential throughout Mesopotamian history, their dominance in economic affairs began to decline with the rise of more centralized political structures. During the Akkadian Empire, c. 2334 to 2154 BCE, rulers such as Sargon of Akkad shifted some economic control away from temples and into the hands of royal administrations. Kings began appointing officials to oversee taxation, trade, and labor, reducing the temple's direct influence over these matters. During the Third Dynasty of c. 2112 to 2004 BCE, temples still played a key role in the economy, but royal authority became more pronounced. The state introduced bureaucratic reforms, and records indicate an increasing separation between temple and palace functions. Under Hammurabi's rule, 1792 to 1750 BCE, legal codes established clearer property laws and private economic activity expanded. By the Neo-Babylonian period, c. 626 to 539 BCE, temples remained important religious institutions but had lost much of their economic power to royal estates and private merchants. The introduction of coinage and increased trade networks also contributed to the decline of the traditional temple economy. However, temples still functioned as cultural and educational centers, preserving knowledge and maintaining religious traditions. 5. Legacy and influence on later societies. The temple economy and theocratic rule of Mesopotamia had a lasting impact on later civilizations. Elements of the redistributive economy influenced economic models in ancient Egypt and the Hittite Empire. The concept of divine kingship, where rulers derived their legitimacy from gods, persisted in various forms throughout the ancient world, including in Persian and Roman imperial ideology. The temple's role as an administrative center foreshadowed later bureaucratic systems. The use of standardized weights, measures, and accounting methods pioneered by Mesopotamian temple administrators laid the groundwork for more complex economic systems in later periods. Moreover, the idea of religious institutions holding economic and political power continued into medieval and early modern times, particularly in societies where the church played a major role in governance, such as in medieval Europe. The temple economy and theocratic rule in ancient Mesopotamia demonstrate how religious and economic systems were deeply interconnected in early civilizations. Temples were not just places of worship, but also economic powerhouses that controlled land, labor, and trade. Priests held immense authority, both spiritually and administratively, shaping the social and political landscape of Mesopotamian city-states. Over time, the increasing centralization of power in the hands of kings and the expansion of private commerce led to a decline in the temple's direct economic control. However, the legacy of Mesopotamian temple economies can still be seen in later civilizations, influencing the development of state administration, religious authority, and economic management. The study of Mesopotamian temple economies offers valuable insights into the ways early societies organized their resources and governance, highlighting the complex interplay between religion, economy, and politics in the ancient world.